Hello, and once again, this is Stephen Nojiri, and this is the Tara Genji Jingunden. So, in a previous video that was labeled Introduction, we went over several things, an overarching sort of introduction. But what this video is going to do is focus more on the word Jingunden and sort of go back over the ground of the meaning of the word and also explain another word that is related to Jingunden. So, Jingunden also can be pronounced Shingunden, if you remember that from the previous video. Both pronunciations are valid, both pronunciations are legitimate, but we're using Jingunden instead of Shingunden. We're changing that initial j for, we have the possibility of doing Jin or Shin at the beginning. And again, if you remember in the previous video, the reason we are using Jin is because we want to focus on the imperial definition, not a generic divinity definition. So I'm going to put on the screen now the kanji. So with this kanji, many of you will recognize this as the kanji, for kami or jin, shin. It means divinity, deity, but it also can refer, in this particular case especially, to the imperial household or the imperial court. And again, the reason it can refer to the imperial court is because the imperial family, the emperor, is descended from the sun goddess, and as a direct descendant from the sun goddess, with the genealogy in place, it is essentially considered divinity in the flesh. So therefore, the imperial court is considered kami, is considered deity, is considered divinity, and so therefore this term Shin, Jin, Shingunden means imperial military method. Again, it can be pronounced Shingunden, and it could be translated as divine military method, as long as, if when you say divine military method, you understand, you know that the divinity being referred to here is the lineage of the sun goddess. So therefore, this is why I've gone with Jingunden and trying to put in the English imperial military method, because that way this connection between the tradition and the imperial line and the sun goddess is not lost. So now let's move on to another very important term, Oboshiden, which at first look means tradition of the great star. This can also be understood to be tradition of the sun, because in this case the great star would be the sun. So tradition of the great star, tradition of the sun. But you also should know that the Oboshiden is a subsection of the Jingunden. So within the Jingunden, there is these teachings known as the Oboshiden. Now, in theory, you could potentially take the Oboshiden out of the Jingunden, and it may initially look as if it could be removed as its own sort of existing entity. However, with more study and looking carefully, you would see that taking the Oboshiden out of the Jingunden destroys the context and makes the Oboshiden not really complete. Therefore, even though it has its own name, Oboshiden, it is correct to understand that Oboshiden is a sub teaching of the teaching of Jingunden. So you have Jingunden, and then within the Jingunden, you have sort of a section called Oboshiden. Now you should also note that the Oboshiden is it's written with the kanji for Great Star Tradition, and it can be read again as Tradition of the Great Star or Tradition of the Sun. In this case, again, it is referring to the sun goddess. It is referring to the imperial court. But the Tada Genji tradition also has sort of a teaching within the Tada Genji version that describes the Oboshiden as also being able to be written as, and this is a play on the kanji for the Great Star, because the Great Star tradition is written with Oboshiden, right? But the kanji for star, the boshi part, the O means great, the boshi part means star. You can actually break the kanji for star into two other kanjis for sun and birth, or to manifest. So in the Genji tradition, there is a sort of a way of reading Oboshiden rather than saying the tradition of the sun or the tradition of the great star. It's the tradition that the great sun gave birth to, or that the great sun created. So it still refers to this idea of the sun goddess giving rise to the imperial court and the imperial court giving rise to the military tradition. It's just a slightly different way of interpreting the name. And so we'll close this video out by looking at the kanji on the screen. If you look at your screen, you will see the kanji for Jingunden, and then you'll also see how that could be pronounced Shingunden. And then I've also put the kanji for Oboshiden, and then I've also put the Tada Genji specific alternate way of looking at Oboshiden, so that you can see how it can either be read as the tradition of the great star or the tradition of the sun, or how you can look at it as the tradition that the great sun gave birth to, or the tradition that the great sun created. And if you look on your screen, you will see that. So, and that brings this video to an end. The purpose of this video is really just to make sure that you know that the fundamental word Jingunden and Oboshiden.